Welcome to the Leading Movement Health Series. I'm your host, Phil Wagner, founder and CEO of Sparta Science. And today I'm super excited. We have Stuart Lancaster, who is the head coach of Racing 92, a French professional rugby club. Stuart was also the former English national team rugby coach, and that's where we first met. And one of the reasons I'm excited about today is, I first became aware of this concept of leadership and curiosity because when I visited Stuart and his team in England, I got scheduled with his full-time staff so he could get my input. And I thought, this is weird. Like, why am I getting called into the head coach's office? I'm just visiting. But it really speaks to Stuart because throughout his career, he's always been both a student and a teacher of leadership and sees it as the craft or the art of coaching. And so the awareness of health, where this intersects with Stuart, is it often stems from our own personal experiences. And he had an early retirement as a player due to injury. So he's got this perspective both as a player, but also now as a leader. So Stuart, welcome.
Thanks, Phil. Nice to connect again.
Yeah, it's been a while for sure. Yeah, and so Stuart, talk a little. Go ahead.
No, say it was there, 2013, 2014, and here we are.
Yes.
Later.
And when you throw COVID in there with the dog years, right, it distorts time a little bit as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. But no, it was a great time with England. 7 years in Ireland after that, and obviously now in France.
Yeah, and so you've had a chance to see different organizations, even spend some time here in the States. Talk a little bit about, why health is important to organizations, and whether that's from a leadership perspective or even from a player perspective.
Well, I mean, I think from my point of view, like the health of the team and the health of the individuals within the team is like I would say like a battery on a phone. And you want to come back in it to work in the morning where you are fully charged back to 100%. And for me personally, as the leader, I need to make sure that I'm recharging my batteries and everything else. It's very difficult, obviously, to always get back to 100% after every night and every morning. But what you've got to understand from a leadership perspective is, how can I make sure that the energy leaks, the things that drain the battery, are minimized? So things like poor coaching, poor environment, poor behavior, poor culture, a bullying environment, an environment where people have fear. Where they don't enjoy coming to work, versus one that's like great culture, great identity, great player ownership, fantastic coaching, great integration of management, sports science staff and leaders. And that's a good starting point for making sure that we're not draining the energy out of people within our organization. And then the second thing is then, we obviously finish the day more tired than when we started. We've had challenging conversations, we've had some tough training sessions or whatever. What is it that recharges our personal battery that means that we go and come back in the morning, close to 100 again? So for me personally, I'm more probably introverted than extroverted. So a bit of time on my own, walking the dog, exercise. And I spend a lot of time trying to explain to the people in the staff that I would work with and the players about this concept so that they understand how to recover, renew, and come back, back with a healthy mindset for the next day. And then if you have that environment, then it's amazing where it takes you. The energy that you get on a daily basis is transformative, really.
Yeah, it's great to key in on that aspect of energy and creating awareness. And you even mentioned awareness of yourself as a leader, right? In order to help convey that awareness to the individual player or person that you're leading. When you talk about that, from an energy standpoint, we hit it on it briefly before we started the interview. Where does data play a role in that? Because there's, we're losing a little bit of the art. And part of the reason we have to create awareness more with individuals is they're always attached to something digital, right? And so in a way, they've kind of lost touch with just that basic self-awareness or intuition.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a firm believer in the art of coaching. So whilst I use data to sometimes support decisions that I make, I've never followed the not the trend, but the path that data's taken in sport. Less so in the UK, Ireland, and France than it is in the US. I think I'm right. I don't think it's as strong. But generally, for me, I've always sort of railed against it and tried to use it as a support to my decision making rather than dictate my decision making.
Yeah.
So it's never overwhelmed me personally. I've never lost touch with the art of getting the best out of people. Leadership, coaching, and management, three areas that I really focus on. Coaching for me is getting the best out of individuals. It's creating enjoyable training sessions that create habits that sticking in big games in rugby environment. The management of people and the leadership of inspiring a vision, and to set goals so people can see clearly where they're going and they can follow that vision. And at the end of the day, we play sport with human beings. We're human beings. We have emotions, we have feelings, and we're not robots. We're not purely. We can't just program people to deliver. And emotion, and certainly in a combat sport like rugby, where you really have to want to put your body on the line to win the game of rugby. Emotion plays a big part, and tapping into people's emotions and getting the best out of people plays a huge role. And data then obviously backs up that intuition often. But I'm more, if art of coaching is on one end of the spectrum and the data is on the other end, I'm definitely more towards the art.
Yeah, and you mentioned, almost three different hats, if you will, that you wear, right? And most leaders have to wear different hats, and you clearly kind of articulated there's leadership, coaching, management, right? And the management you're saying is, more on the people side, the leaders more on inspiring a vision, and then the coaching is more on the tactical side. Is that
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me, like, if people are listening out there, why is that relevant? Because when you're in a leadership position, you've got you've only got 100% of capacity, so it's where you divide your time within those three areas. So if I take the England job where I met you, I would say, whilst I was brought up as initially a physical education teacher, I was an academy coach. I became a head coach, then became an England national coach. I would say by the end, my coaching percentage was, let's call it 10%. I would say I was doing a lot of management, managing a big program, managing sponsors, managing media, managing some country relationships, logistics of travel and whatever else, so let's call that 50%. And then 40% was the sending in the direction of travel, working with the board and et cetera, et cetera. Now, when I finished that role, I joined Leinster Rugby as the head coach. And one thing I spent a long time thinking about in between those two roles was, where is my passion? Now, my passion is ultimately in coaching. If we go back to my formative years as a teacher, it's teaching, it's coaching, in its purest form. So I was lucky that the balance was redressed in that role. There was a very good management structure that surrounded me. So I could then, let's call it 10% management, maybe 20%, 40% coaching, 40% leadership at Leinster, 7 years. Then I got the opportunity to join Racing 92 as head coach. So this is a big challenge, So I'm now coming in as a number one. It's effectively like becoming the CEO of a new organization. But I can influence what surrounds me in order to give me the opportunity to do what I love doing best, but also what I'm probably most skillful at. But it's in France, and I don't speak French, so it's taken over. It's taken over in a foreign country, in a different culture, as a CEO or a head teacher of a school. But I was lucky in that I got the job in September. I didn't start it until the following June. So I had a bit of time to sort of shape what I wanted in terms of infrastructure. So I've got a management team around me that can. So I end up with the same percentages as I did at Leinster. So 20% management, 40% coaching, 40% leadership. And I'm happy. I'm happiest in that role. And I think if you're working in a business or in a leadership position, you'll understand, you might substitute coaching for whatever your technical part of your role is.
Right.
But it's the same thing, and it's trying to really gravitate to roles or engineer the roles so that you can maximize your strengths, do what your passion is, do what you do best. And that ultimately has a massive knock-on effect to the effectiveness of your role and your ability to do the job well.
Yeah, and I love how it loops back to your first point around, recovery and managing yourself as a leader, which is self-awareness. When it comes to these roles, right? There's also a self-awareness of where you excel, what you enjoy, but then helping bring the team and structure the role that allows you as the leader to excel, but then bring in people to fill in other areas that you may not be as good at or don't enjoy as much.
Yeah, exactly. And like I say, I enjoy the management side of things because I enjoy like the plotting of a week, a month, a year. But I enjoy the other bits better.
Yeah.
And I think to be effective in a number one position, I think you need to be good at all three. I think it's, I've worked with coaches who are, I don't know, maybe poor at the managerial side of things. So it's reasonably chaotic. You never know what's coming next. And, or they're great at the two, but they're not so good at the third. So I tried to, in my developmental years, master all three. And then, but now it's very clear in my mind, what I really, really enjoy doing. I enjoy like if I take yesterday as an example. So we're away in a camp in Spain at the moment. We've played 3 games. We're in the middle of a second preseason, and we've got a stretch of 23 league games plus Europe to come. And our goal is to become, the best team in Europe. And yesterday was a combination of on-field training, which I'm leading as head coach, and then it was an off-field session on values, identity, behaviour, the DNA of Racing 92 that we want to take forward into the season, and the culture and the environment that surrounds that. And I got just such a buzz out of doing both things, a really busy day, really a lot for me to sort of think. Obviously, I'm speaking most of the time in English and it's getting translated into French, and it's a cognitive load that's huge, but it was such a great day. I loved it.
Yeah, and how do you balance that going into? I mean, it's not just a new organization, to your point, right? It's also a new culture, right? The French do things obviously different than the Americans and the English, and and certainly when you're in Ireland, like what are the key things when you go into a new organization or a new environment like that you see as like the high priorities, in order to adapt into something new?
Yeah, I think again, I go back to the point. So I got the job in September, and I was finishing my last job at Leinster. So I had a bit of time. So asking a lot of really good questions was the key, to really understand what makes the French culture different, what makes them tick, what is it they're good at the moment, what is it they need to improve. They're very good in rugby terms at the unstructured parts of the game, but maybe not such good on the detail. Their fluidity and their ability to see space is incredible. But often they'd see space and throw the ball on the floor, and we'd end up defending all the time. So just little things like that in terms of the way they see the game of rugby, but also the way in which they interact in meetings. I don't think the French would really respond to a dictatorial coach for long. I don't think many people would, to be honest, but I don't think I'd last long if that was my style. But equally, they actually crave a bit of sense of direction as well. So asking good questions and really being observant. And now I'm here. Being on the spectrum of empowering versus directive, slightly towards the directive side to influence them with my philosophy and my beliefs and my experience that I've learned over the years, but not to a point where I'm dictating, as I say. And I think trying to hit the sweet spot. And also I've kept the coaching team are all a bit younger than me. They're French. They're from the club. So I've not just brought in a complete different coaching team that has no sense of connection to Racing 92 or sense of identity of what Racing stand for. So I'm forever asking about, so what happened in this game last year, and what happened 10 years ago, and why did this happen, and what's the ownership, what's the values of the owner, and just really getting to understand the DNA of the club without trying to impose everything from what I've learned from Ireland and England. So I think that's the art of it. I'm 3 months in. I've signed a 4-year deal. So let's see how we go, shall we?
Yeah.
3 years in, early days.
Right. No, I think this is great. And I know you're away at camp, so I think what we like to do is try to kind of summarize for listeners, some good takeaways. And I love the analogy, the first of, your players, yourself as a leader are a battery, like a phone battery that ideally the next day is fully charged. And the key thing you hit on was identifying what could be potentially draining of that.
I think it's the two, Phil. It's the what's the energy leaks that really drain the battery quickly. Like,
yep.
I remember I was with England, and it's a high profile position, and it was best
media.
The media guy would send through all the sort of newspapers from every day, and I'd be like, by the end, I was like, please, can you stop sending me these? So just something like that, or but equally. Knowing that a good night's sleep for me, knowing that exercise works, knowing that hydration, knowing that I'm best in the morning, not in the evening. So therefore, if I've got to get ahead of the day, then I'm up early and I'll work early to prepare myself for the players to come in and to be on point, on message in every meeting that I deliver. And then as I get back towards evening time, I'm not burning the candle at both ends. I'm really cognizant of that. My health and well-being, it's a picture of the face of the team, isn't it? Mike, like, if I'm tired, I'm grumpy, if I'm low on energy, they look to me and they'll respond accordingly. You know what I mean? So manage yourself first, understand yourself, and they'll follow your lead generally.
Yeah. And I think, the other key point, I'm just, as you're listening, I just, really, gravitate towards that self-awareness too, of those aspects of the leadership, the coaching or the technical piece, and then the management, knowing that every coach has to master or at least be involved in all those areas, but you're going to be better at some, enjoy some. So how do you bring the team around you, or in different environments, you might have to shift that percentage based on where the organization's at.
I think that word used there, Phil, mastery, is key for successful leadership. Like, as we're developing as leaders and young leaders in any environment, it's impossible to be 10 out of 10, in each area, but you have to strive to become that. Now, I wouldn't be close in any of those 3 areas to 10 out of 10, but I'm going to try and become as best as I can. I'm going to study leadership. I'm going to study management. I'm going to study coaching. I'm going to reflect on my own behavior. I'm going to reflect on my sessions. I'm going to ask for feedback. I'm going to speak to mentors. I'm going to study sport. I'm going to read books from great coaches and great leaders. And I'm going to do my very best to be 10 out of 10 in each of those 3 areas. And I think we owe it to our athletes to do that.
Yeah, and I think the last point, third takeaway I have from listening to you is how important, when you go into these new environments, asking questions are, right? To understand, to your point, the DNA of the organization, but the DNA of the people around you.
Yeah. I think, and that's everyone. That's not just like, let's pick the 2 senior players and the 2 people closest to me in the management team. That's everyone from, often some of the best information I've had from my time at Russell so far is from Chloe, she was the intern physio, and she's like a wealth of information for me. So it's everyone. It's everyone from the support staff to the espoirs. They call them the young players. Their feedback is important to me, all the way through to the guy who was the previous head coach has become the president of the club, Lauren Travers, and so I'm constantly going back to him and asking him, how did this work last year, and tell me a bit more about this, and how did this evolve? And it's constantly going through my mind, and I'm trying to picture the identity of the team, and then place my fingerprint over the top as well.
Yeah, one of our previous podcasts, they talked about the future as a spin-off of the past, right? So, very similar to kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah,
understanding
100%.
what happened
Yeah,
before.
it's understanding the. I talked about it yesterday to the players about if you take it like from a family point of view, your own family. Like my family's from a farming background. My dad's a farmer. My grandfather was a farmer, and there's a set of values that are associated with the Lancasters that I think I represent, and I pass on to my children, and they represent, and those values then guide them through their life. And I think so. What do we represent? We represent Racing, and we represent the history of Racing '92. So let's understand it. So one of the things I did yesterday in the meeting, there's a great video about the history of Racing. A lot of the players hadn't seen it, so they didn't understand. And we're a very diverse team. Like it's a combination of, I would say, 70% French. We've got South Africans, Georgians, Argentinians, English, Welsh, Samoans, Fijians, all in the team. So we have this great event once a week where one player stands up and tells their story of their life. And we had a guy yesterday, Junior Tabavu from Fiji, and it was just such a brilliant set. I love them every week, and so we're trying to understand what is the DNA of Racing. Well, one of the things that's obvious to me is that it's got heritage of being one of the oldest French clubs, but one of its key strengths is diversity. And it's got an attacking mindset. So it's got this DNA of we want to attack with our game plan. We've got a flamboyance about us, and I need to understand all that and then try and bring that to life. So yeah, that is so important. Understanding identity, building on the identity based on what's happened in the past to drive the future.
Well said. Stuart, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Phil. Great to catch up.